Whilst these deterrents could have crippled the study of BPM, it was shown that organizations that actually persisted using BPR principles actually gained efficiency in how things got done, as compared to companies that didn't implement business process redesign. Secondly, the introduction of enterprise resource planning systems, or ERP systems, which store data that is related to different business operations centrally, and workflow management systems, which essentially help to distribute work to different actors in a company, both have had an impact on how processes should be implemented, and both pointed the need to formalize the discipline of business process management or business process reengineering. In fact, these workflow management systems were further improved to integrate with other enterprise systems to form what is now known as business process management systems, or BPMS, which are tools that can be used to support the implementation as well as the execution of business processes. What makes BPM appealing is that it encompasses the process-centered view of the organization. Also, just to clear the confusion between the concept of business process management, or BPM, and business process redesign, or BPR, both concepts are obviously focused on organizational processes. More specifically, however, BPR is concerned with aspects of planning and organizing those processes to revamp them towards efficiency, performance, and reduced cost. BPM, or business process management, on the other hand, as we have seen from our definition earlier, encompasses a whole host of things, such as the concepts, the methods, the tools, and the techniques of how this can be done. And also, BPM investigates how these processes are even actually executed. As such, we consider BPR as a subset of techniques that can be incorporated within the context of BPM, or business process management. As a result of this, you will start to get a sense that BPM as a discipline is concerned about the entire life cycle of the business process, not only just simply planning and organizing them to be more efficient, but rather planning, organizing, monitoring, and executing those processes. So BPM is more all-encompassing study of business processes. On that topic of looking at processes from end to end, we now want to focus a little bit deeper on the BPM lifecycle, which we are talking about. There are two learning outcomes which deal with the business process management lifecycle, or the BPM lifecycle. We will define the BPM lifecycle and also discuss how a typical BPM initiative is implemented throughout the different phases of the BPM lifecycle. In this section, we explore the phases that we follow in business process management. And the idea here is simply that when we are faced with an exercise where we are required to analyze, redesign, and model business processes, we don't just jump into re-engineering those business processes, but rather we follow a specific or structured approach which unfolds in different phases. We call this the BPM lifecycle. The goal of engaging in a BPM initiative is to ensure that the business processes covered by the BPM initiative lead to consistently positive outcomes that deliver maximum value. Later on, you will see that measuring value that is derived by a business process is crucial in business process management. The BPM lifecycle consists of 6 phases, which are, firstly, the process identification phase; secondly, process discovery; thirdly, process analysis; fourth, process redesign; fifth, process improvement; and lastly, number 6, process monitoring, as shown in the diagram reflected here. Let's examine each of the different phases of the BPM lifecycle in detail, starting with the first phase, which is process identification. This is the initial phase of the BPM lifecycle. In this phase, the business problem under investigation is identified and scoped. For example, in our class example, the business problem under investigation is the rental order process at Built It. As shown here, the outcome of this process is what is known as the process architecture, which is essentially a collection of all the related processes which cover the work being performed by an organization to achieve a specific goal. The process architecture is essentially an overview of the set of business-related processes that will be evaluated and analyzed. Earlier on, we mentioned that measuring the value derived by a process is a crucial step. In fact, before we start to analyze any process in detail, it is essential to clearly define what is known as the process performance measures, which are also known as process performance metrics. Essentially, the process performance metrics focus on how a specific task in a process is being performed by measuring its performance and if individual goals that relate to that specific process are being achieved. Some typical process performance measures relate to key dimensions such as cost, time, quality, and flexibility. We also refer to these as the process performance dimensions. In Chapter 2, you will see what the specific process performance measures or metrics or key performance indicators are, which can be derived for each of the process dimensions. Looking at our case study, some examples of process performance metrics could include, for instance, cost. This is where we could measure the total cost of all the equipment rented out by Build It within a specific time or time interval, for example, within a month. This is all about making organizational processes cheaper. In terms of time, an example of this process performance measure is that we could measure the average amount of time it takes between the moment an equipment rental request is submitted by a site engineer until the equipment is delivered at the construction site. This is referred to as the cycle time. This is all about making organizational processes more faster. In terms of quality, an example of this performance measure could include, for instance, measuring each time a negative outcome is experienced such that an error percentage is established. This is about making organizational much better. In terms of flexibility, an example of the flexibility performance metric could be, for example, measuring the extent to which the performance of a process can be maintained under, say, changing or abnormal conditions. This is about making organizational processes easily adaptable to changing circumstances. Now, as a way of testing your understanding of process performance measures, think back to the university admissions process from the exercise we mentioned earlier on, and attempt the following exercise, which is about identifying performance measures that can be attached to this specific process. The second phase in the BPM lifecycle is the process discovery phase. This phase involves investigating or evaluating the current state of the processes under investigation and documenting it using process models. We'll learn more about those later as we progress through the module. This phase is called as-is process modeling because the current or the existing or the as-is business processes are analyzed and documented. We will learn more about process models. But in essence, process models are used in BPM to simply facilitate communication between stakeholders who are involved in a BPM initiative.